The View from the Bay starts now.
And welcome to The View from the Bay on this Monday, February 4th. I'm Spencer Christian.
And I'm Janelle Wang. Thanks for joining us. Also, a warm welcome to all the viewers watching us online. That's because we're streamed live thanks to our friends at Comcast. Well, your money at risk. Michael Finney tells us what we need to know to protect it. That's coming up next. And
how many times have you been ticked off and said, "I'll sue"? Well, you may not know it, but you may have given up that right a long time ago, and that's because of a small print provision called binding mandatory arbitration. Companies consider this crucial to the way they're doing business in America these days. Consumer groups are lining up to do away with these little-known contract provisions. Attorney Anne-Marie Murphy is with the law firm of Cotchett, Petrie, and McCarthy in Burlingame. She's joining us now to talk about this. You've studied this. You've spent a lot of time with this, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I've spent quite a bit of time recently on the issue of mandatory arbitration agreements. There's something that consumers need to be aware of and concerned about.
Now, what are binding mandatory? There's so many words here. Binding mandatory arbitration.
Well, let's start with the word arbitration. Arbitration is a form of private judging. It means instead of going to court and being before a jury, you're participating before a private company. You're basically before a judge that's been hired to hear the dispute.
So it's privatized justice.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then we have mandatory. I never like the word mandatory. So
as a consumer, you shouldn't.
Okay.
What this means is that in whatever consumer contract you've signed, you've agreed that if a dispute arises, you will go to arbitration. You've basically given away the right to go to court instead. So arbitration would be mandatory if a dispute arises.
Okay, so what I've done is said, as an American citizen, I'm going to give up all these American rights and instead go to a private judge.
Exactly, that's what's happening. You're basically agreeing to give up a constitutional right to have a dispute heard before a jury and before an impartial judge.
Now, when am I doing this?
More frequently than most people would realize. Mandatory arbitration clauses are found frequently in credit card agreements, in phone contracts for cellular telephones, employment agreements, all types of consumer contracts. They're very prevalent.
So how does it work? You and I, let's say you're the cell phone company, and you and I get into a beef, and I say I'm going to sue you and I go to court, it's immediately chucked out, right?
Right. Well, that's what the company would say. The company would go to court and say, I'm sorry, Mr. Finney, you agreed that you would arbitrate any disputes with us. And unfortunately, most of the time, if you've signed one of these agreements, you're going to find yourself out of luck and out of court.
Now, why do I want to go to court rather than arbitration?
Well, let me back up and say, first of all, not all arbitration is bad. Arbitration actually can be good, and it can be an efficient way to settle disputes if that's what you've agreed to once a dispute arises. But in these situations where you're finding these mandatory arbitration clauses, it's often because there's a big incentive for the company to be sending their customers to the forum. These procedures are generally secretive as opposed to being out in the open like in a court. They actually wind up being more costly for consumers most of the time. As opposed to a few $100 filing fee in court, the consumer can wind up with thousands and thousands of dollars of arbitration costs.
So I go to court, it's free, other than my costs with attorneys. I go to arbitration, I can end up paying the fees for all of this.
Absolutely. In court, you aren't paying an hourly rate to the judge. I mean, that's covered by your tax payments, right? But if you're going to arbitration, you're most likely going to be paying a high hourly fee for this private decider, this private judge.
I've got to wrap this up. There's so much to talk about with this, but what can consumers do? What should they do?
Well, at the outset, consumers need to be aware of this issue. They need to think twice before they sign a new agreement and scan through it. See if there is one of these arbitration clauses. Unfortunately, I can almost guarantee in most of these consumer contracts it's going to be there.
But at least that way you're aware. You know what you're getting into.
You do, and you may have the opportunity to opt out in some circumstances.
Oh, very good. Anne-Marie, thank you very much for joining us. Now we need to...